the drummer was from New York at the time. His name was Tommy, and he was a sick drummer. And
why did you have a drummer from New York when you guys?
We couldn't find one in England. It was
Okay.
it was a mess. It was a fucking mess.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. There's a plethora of great European bands that I've discovered over the years of being in this whole scene. And one that came onto my radar very early in, I guess, my journey is a part of who I'm bringing on the show today. And this band, I think, has been a band that has done so much within their own UK and European hub, and to see them finally kind of doing a couple North American things, which kind of prompted the idea of having Richy on the show here, is something that I'm very excited about because I've been a big fan of this band ever since one of the first time I heard of them. So I'm very excited to be today to be welcoming Richy of Desolated on the Scoped Exposure podcast. Thanks for joining me, Ben.
Yes, man. How are you? You good?
I'm good. Chilling. Very excited to talk some Desolated things with you. But before we get into all the music chats, as you know, we have to check some bevs for the show. So it's tradition for the guests to go first and showcase what they're bringing beverage wise.
Well, I've got the most important beverage of all time, really. It's just straight water. And it's not only is it water, it's smart water.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's going to make me more intelligent the more I drink of it. So I'm for it.
Yeah. You always got to, some people will come onto the show and they're like, I'm not bringing anything special, but like water is the be all and end all.
It's special though, isn't it? Really? It's very special when you think about it. It's in every other beverage. So straight to the source.
Yeah. Is smart water your go-to when you're, buying water versus getting something out of the tap? Or
I mean, I like the bottle, to be honest. That's the only reason. And the branding looks pretty good. I don't really know if there's any difference between this and any other water, if I'm honest. The bottle's nice. There's another one that's like flat at the top. That's also great.
Yeah. Well, good branding for anything always catches my eye, as well as a brand or a bev connoisseur, which is kind of a perfect segue. I'm also drinking something water related, but I'm drinking this. It's called Botany, and it's a sparkling botanical water in the black cherry and vanilla flavor. And same thing. I was like, that can looks crazy. Branding is on point. And I don't think I've ever had a sparkling botanical water, but we're going to give it the old college try.
I don't even know what that is, but it sounds magical.
Well, it's like botanical. I think of something kind of like a marsh or something that you're going on like a weekend date with your partner and you're going to a botanical garden. Not to say that they just took this can and just like, with all the frogs and koi fish or whatever, but the black cherry and vanilla flavoring is a good pairing, I think. And it checks out.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, cool. Well, Richy, cheers to you, man. Really excited to finally have you on the show.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man.
So, Richy, any new guests that comes here on the show who haven't done previous interviews, at least on our show, I always like to get a bit of context as far as how that person just got on their hardcore journey. So kind of like your hardcore punk metal origin story. Take me way back in time when you were like first either hearing screaming, guitar music, breakdowns, however you want to spin it.
I mean, I think I've always been into metal, really, because my dad was into it. So my old man was like showing me bands like Black Sabbath and Metallica when I was like 10. And then he just bought me a guitar one Christmas and was like, "Oh, learn this." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, fine." So I did, and then I started getting into sort of more like Metallica and Megadeth and stuff like that, more of the sort of heavier thrash scene, which I mean is pretty similar to hardcore anyway. When you break it down, it's all riffy, isn't it? So I think when I got into like hardcore, I mean, I started going to sort of bigger shows like Metallica, Megadeth, and stuff like that with my dad when I was like 14. And I think when I got into hardcore, I was probably about 17 or 18. And my friend Dan Ford, who was the bassist in Desolated, but left a couple of years, well, probably quite a few years ago now, he was like, oh, I'm playing this show with his old band. And I think it was Gravemaker and Carpathian.
Oh,
and that
really?
Was
that's a Canadian pick for me. So
that was one of the first hardcore shows I went to, and Gravemaker.
Wow, that's
fucking killed it, man.
That's very crazy. I was literally listening to their first record just last week, and reminiscing of those days. But it's crazy that a Canadian band was one of your first real deal local bands. That's really cool.
I think that was the first proper hardcore show I went to, and then it was around the same time that I went to Your Demise, Brutality Will Prevail were on that tour as well, and This Is Colour, which were all like UK bands, but that was like a cool tour for back in the day. Like,
yeah,
it was just as Your Demise changed their singer, I think, as well. So it was like a big deal. There was loads of kids there, and I was like, this is mad. Like, I just like the energy, man. Like, I think with metal, it's cool and stuff, and you've got a lot of talented people on stage, but you're never going to get the same energy as you get with hardcore.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. There's a huge difference of like, you go to the big 1,000-person concert hall or whatever, and they have the projector screens and the smoke and the fire and all that. Like it would be funny when I would talk to my parents when I was like first going to like local shows. I'd be like, I made a clear difference between I'm going to a concert or I'm going to a show.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's just different levels of that. But the energy of like a show, which is like going to be, just all those local bands, maybe a touring act here and there, that like veracity and that like how things can go from 0 to 100 is not the same if you're going to see like when I saw Slipknot, it was like, I'm going to sit back and like enjoy this.
Yeah.
But when I see a band that's like clearly influenced by Slipknot, there's like a new sense of intensity that like builds in me, and
Yeah, for sure, man. I think I remember seeing him, was it Metallica, Wembley Stadium, and like I think it was around the same time I got into hardcore, and I was just stood there at the back, like, wow. Like they've got fireworks. Like this is wild,
right?
And I mean, they sound fucking mint, but it's a different vibe, isn't it? You're not going to get that in a 200 cap room where everyone's jumping off the stage and moshing and shit, and everyone's waiting for that moment in the set where it kicks off, and it's like you've got that adrenaline going. I think with the bigger metal shows, you don't have that.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily like it's a smaller space, so the energy is like, more condensed. I think it's more like everyone at a local show is more or less on there for the same reason, as far as like being a part of that intense like expression of music and dance and all that. When you go and see Metallica with thousands of people, a lot of those people maybe that's their like one show a year, and they're just going out for drinks and whatever. But like you still have diehard like Metallica fans, but like when it's at a show, when people are like, I actually don't even know any of these bands, but I'm just here for the music, then things can really just snowball and become something really special, for sure.
And I think that with hardcore, there's more of like a community vibe as well. There's definitely, I don't know if that's because of the scale of it or whatever, but I feel like you go to a Metallica gig or any sort of big metal show, and it's like, you're going to get like a guy who's wasted hug you and tell you his name and show you his ID maybe. Like,
yeah.
But I think when you go to a hardcore show, you meet like-minded people that are there for the same reasons. And I think that community vibe and that sort of sense of being it's nice. It's nice for people to have somewhere where they can go and do what they've got to do. Like, that's what I've always admired about hardcore.
So you're mentioning how your dad was putting you on to some of the bigger, like heavier acts, at least when you're growing up. Like, was he also going to these shows with you, or would you just get dropped off and then you would just tell him on the way home?
What, like metal shows or hardcore shows?
Well, yeah, I'm like you were saying how he started taking you to those bigger shows when you were 14.
Yeah, he would. Oh God, he would come in. Yeah, definitely. He would take me there and be there throughout the whole thing. I mean, he loved them bands as well. So for him, it was like great. Like I'm going to see Megadeth with my son. He definitely didn't enjoy trying to navigate London when we went, but the show, he was there throughout. Yeah, and he loved it. Like it was his vibe. I mean, I think he was really into like Black Sabbath and stuff like that. So Metallica obviously were the era after that. So when he was going to them things, he was, it was his thing. And then when I went to see Metallica at Wembley, I went with my mum as well, which was bizarre. But I mean, she's another one. I mean, her favorite bands like Queen, but she still likes Metallica, Megadeth, all that sort of stuff. She doesn't go to many of them because she doesn't like standing up for hours on end, which is completely fair. But if there's seating tickets, she's there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's cool. Like, it was cool going with them and, hearing about when they went to gigs when they were a kid.
So did that carry over to when you were going to like the more local shows, or was your dad like, no?
They stepped out then. Yeah. They were like, no, this is not for me. Like there's someone trying to jump on me. I'm not about it. Like
I got you.
They like the music. Like I mean, every time I get in the car with my dad, I mean, it rarely happens now because we live in different sides of the country, but I'll be like, oh, you check out this band, see what you think. And like, I think I showed him like Power Trip and stuff like that. And he was like, yeah, it's awesome. Like, it's wicked. He loves it. But like, I mean, he's in his 70s now. So he's not going to be going to them things with people risking his health. You know what I mean? But I think he'll listen to it on CD. And they still go and, I mean, they still go and see bands. I think they went and saw Queen with that new singer. I don't know. Adam someone, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And so they're still actively going to those sort of things like heavy music, but I mean, they've taken sort of step back from the more crazier stuff. They've seen Desolated more times than they can probably count. Which
and even then, it's kind of that thing where you're like, hey, I want you to come see my band, but I know it could get a little crazy. And even like even if you stand behind the amps, there's still a sliver of a chance that some person's gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna act up and be the on stage crowd killer, So So they've definitely seen all of that, and I think my mum sort of stepped back early into our sort of band life, really, because she was like, this is just violent, and I don't really understand it. Each to their own, but it's not for me. And I was like, fair. You can't really. But they were always relatively supportive of it. I mean, they're into it. They always listen whenever we put out a record. They've always like listened to it and been like, yeah, love it. But won't come see you live, but love it.
Pretend to love it. Yeah,
right.
I think they hate the vocals, hate them because they don't understand it. They're like, why does he sound like he's got a sore throat? So,
like, well, that's kind of the vibe.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, but no, they're still into it now. And I mean, I could probably show my dad some hardcore bands with sort of like lighter vocals and he'd love it. Maybe not so much my mum. She's still set on Queen, but yeah.
It's I have this firm belief that like, if someone dug deep enough into any music genre, they would for sure find at least one artist or some act that they could vibe with. So whether, and that's for everyone that's like, I listen to everything, but not country. It's like, if you like did a deep dive for a month long, you would find some awesome country artists. It's just like people don't have the patience, the time to be able to, really dedicate their lives to doing that. And it doesn't come natural to people to chase those curiosities or like where do I even look for that? But it's cool to hear that your parents are at least listening to your music when you guys are putting out albums.
Yeah, for real. They're still backing it.
Still backing it. So let's talk about like the origin of Desolated. You're the first member of said band who's coming on the show, and so talk to me about like how the project came to be. Was you know, I think when we were setting this up, Cam was like, Richy is the guy to talk things Desolated. So talk to me about like the origin, the singular cell before the organism started.
I think the biggest thing was like, so we started it when we were 16, but it didn't really start when we were 16. The people that were in it at the time just wanted to play music. That was it. We were into metal. We were just sort of getting into hardcore. All we wanted to do was play music and play gigs. Like, I don't think we knew what it was going to be. I think when you're that age and kind of, I hadn't really fully found hardcore yet. I'd listened to some bands and was like, Hatebreed was probably the furthest I delved into it at that point. It was just sort of, I guess it was just 5 people that were completely different, and some, obviously Paul's still in it, but the rest of them have been gone for a really, really long time now. Just wanted to play music, man. And the sound obviously started off very metal, because I think we were, at the time, the people in it were very into death metal. I was sort of getting into more of the hardcore space, but was still very much involved in sort of listening to Cannibal Corpse and stuff on a daily. So I think at that point we just wanted to play music, really. And I think Paul came round mine when I was like maybe 16, and we had like a little practice room set up in my garage, and he was like, I think he like came to play guitar, but then was like, I haven't played guitar in years, I kind of suck, but I might be able to sing. And we were like, yeah, perfect, like that works. So I think it was just all about wanting to find people, like-minded people, to play music, because like me and the drummer at the time and the other guitarist were from a really small village outside of Southampton, weren't that linked up with Southampton City or anything like that, quite far removed from it, just like going to like metal shows when we could. And I think it was just about finding people to play music, because we grew up in like the era of grime, like the first boom of grime, which was a cool thing to be a part of, but it's not. I wanted to play metal, so I wasn't going to start trying to rap. But every single person, like in our school, grime. They used to sit at the bus stops rapping, like with beats on their Nokia 3310s that they had. They managed to get some beat on there, and they used to just battle rap all the time. There was not, at that point, there wasn't a scene. It was before even like the sort of boom of the scene kid emo stage. That happened when I went to college, and that's when I started meeting so many people into music, into heavier music. And that's when I eventually met Dan, who was our bassist, and got into hardcore, really, because he was like into Your Demise and stuff like that, and he basically just went to any hardcore show that played he knew of, he would be at. And that's I started going with him. So, and I think he like saw like Have Heart and stuff in Southampton, which is like wild, really, when you think about it. But did he know who they were at that time? Maybe. It was before the boom of the internet, but he was just there fucking jumping off stage. So,
right.
Yeah, that's sort of how it really started. I think the band really sculpted together when it was sort of me, Dan, Paul, as Mitch was playing drums at the time. And then we went for a stage where we were a 4-piece, but then we had a guy called Rob from Southampton, and he was also quite involved in hardcore.
Right.
So that's really where it started. And then I think as time went on and we explored other cities, I think by the time I was sort of 20, I was going to a hardcore show like every week, just traveling somewhere in the country to see a band. Like we traveled like 4 or 5 hours just to go see that Backtrack All Dayer in Sheffield, which was mental. And then you'd see him on Wednesday in Southampton. Like it was just, that was my life for so long. Right. It was amazing. And to be honest, looking back, they were probably the best times of my life, just getting in the car at the weekend with your boys and being like, right, we're going to a show. And going somewhere and seeing a band, and then playing shows as well. They were obviously getting busier and more more populated at that time, and I think we had a bit of buzz and were releasing records, and I think then it obviously really kicked off when we released Disorder of Mind, which is the one with Death by My Side on. That's when it popped, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of younger people that listen to this podcast, and I think you're a few years older than me, and just correct the record if I'm trying to like incorrectly guess your age, but I just turned 30 this year, so I think you might
33,
just be...
yeah.
Oh yeah, so just north of me. But yeah, anyone who's like in their early 20s or anything, like essentially who like grew up with the internet already at a scale of getting mature, but now we're just like, it's just at an all-time high. But like before, you probably had the one person that you knew who was like the nerd, or not even the nerd, but the wizard when it came to heavy music, and they could just recommend you all these different things.
We used to use that thing. I can't remember what it was. It was on Blogspot. And you used to go through like a hardcore Blogspot and download zip files of bands. And then when you went to a distro, you'd buy vinyl. Mm-hmm. And you used to go to a distro and be like, I've heard of them, I'll buy their record. Like, I think Dan had what did he have? He had Trapped Under Ice demo that he'd got off some Zip WinRAR site or whatever it was, but it wasn't at the right speed because they'd ripped it off the vinyl. And we were listening to it like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but then we got the actual version and we're like, this is sick.
You're like, oh, this sounds like actually like as it was intended. But yeah, the times are just so different back then, and I think it either made people obsess about it more because it was there was more gratification on like digging through your local record store, or like you like you said, getting those online links and downloading and then looking through the for fans of and being like, oh, like I'm gonna write this down in a notebook and go home and do my research. Nowadays you can just like hit your Spotify daily mix and then you can discover bands that way, which I don't think, one might be more of like a glory days versus the other, but I do think that there was more work required to actually like obsess about this versus what it is now that people can come in and have a very fruitful understanding and excitement about it. But like anyone from like kind of the previous, and the internet existed, but it was like I still remember going to a friend's house and then going on the internet, but like their mom was on the phone and the phone got disconnected and she was screaming, the dial-up. The dial-up era. So, I don't know.
Definitely. I think it must be, I mean, it's no surprise in like, I mean, I don't know if it's the same way you are, but it's bigger here now than it's ever been, I think. I mean, Outbreak Fest, I remember going to, was it Outbreak Fest 2? And they sold it out at like 300 people. And that was big. Mm-hmm. Whereas now they're selling it out at 8,000 people. And you're like, wow, how? But for me, it's only recently started to click about what you said about the Spotify things. You're finding bands so quickly. People have more access to it now than ever, which is crazy. And I think it's such a good thing for the scene, really, because it's now becoming way more populated. Whereas before, when I was younger, it seemed like there was a few key bands that used to do really well, and then there was so much struggle. Whereas now, like local shows, they're popping off, and you could go and see bands that you've not heard of, and there's 150 kids there.
Right.
Whereas I think definitely when I was younger, if you go and saw a hardcore band that not many people knew of, there might be 30 kids there.
Yep. I remember those days like it was yesterday. So. Yeah. And maybe an interesting question about kind of the age and the years of that the hardcore scene is at now. Like Desolated, I was just checking today, and you guys still have like tens of thousands of monthly listeners, and
it's mad.
Yeah, and you guys have a bunch of 2 great records and 2 great EPs on your belt, but you guys haven't put anything out kind of like in this post-COVID kind of time frame. So
crazy.
I'm just kind of curious if new people who are discovering this stuff are like finding you guys from like, or you haven't seen as many of those kids come to I guess like the fan base, so to speak. I'm just kind of curious on how much of that has come through the times that we're in right now.
I don't even know how it's happened, if I'm honest. I've really try and work it out as well. Like those monthly listeners, I mean, it's sick, it's amazing. But I remember putting out Realm of Misery and being, I think it topped at maybe 60K, and now it's like you've got 80,000, and it ranges between 80,000 and sort of 90 to 100,000 every now and then. Mm-hmm. I don't know where they come from. The North American tour definitely helped, and I think when we put that out that we're going to go back to America and we're touring, it like popped. It was crazy. Like the listeners went up, and I remember Tony, who plays bass for us now, was texting me being like, mate, the listeners are just going up every month since we announced America. And I was like, well, that's wild, like wicked, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I just don't know where it's coming from, to be honest, because like you say, we've not put out anything in ages. We've been working on a record for 5 years now, which is so unbelievably slow. It's mad. Like that North American tour, like some of those shows were crazy, and they weren't that good when I felt we were at our peak in popularity, when we just released Death by My Side. I think we did a 7-inch after it with 2 tracks, and I think that was out when we went. I don't even know if it was. But it wasn't like that. It was not as, the shows weren't as populated, they weren't as crazy. Whereas now it just seems like there's more of a market than there ever has been, which is wild and amazing. And I honestly feel quite blessed for a sort of second opportunity and not being left as some old timer in hardcore. But it's amazing to go out and still play those shows, and there's still people that care. Mm-hmm. And new people as well. Like we played Leeds about 2 weeks ago, headline Domfest, and like there was a mix. There was guys that I saw going to those shows when I was 21 still there, and then there's a bunch of new kids buying merch, like meeting us, talking to us, saying, "Oh yeah, I've just found out about you," and stuff. And it's like, it's wild, man. It's mad.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's really cool, like when you've been a band that has kind of stayed the test of time, whether like, you know, maybe there's years of the band being super active and then maybe not as much, but like it's really cool to be able to be like, see the generational gap of your fan base. So you have the kids who are like 19 and they just, you know, they maybe heard Knock Loose on TikTok, and now they're going through the rabbit hole and finding all these bands. And then you have the person who, when they were 19, it was Death by My Side and swinging for the fences at every Desolated show, right?
Yeah.
But it's cool I think I would rather that than just having the numbers of just young fans or just the old head fans. Like I want to be able to be like, okay, I have been around the block and there's people who have like stayed along the way, and I'm still finding, you know, there's still new people who are finding us.
Yeah, for real, man. I think that's the coolest thing about it, is seeing those old people, old guys that used to come to shows and hanging out with them, because you know them, like, especially in UK when it was a small scene, you know those guys and you're hanging out. But then you've got new kids, and it's cool because like you know your old heads will stand there, they'll come with us, like whatever, they'll hop in the van, we've known them for years, and they'll be chilling watching us standing on stage, and it's like, but there's still all of those new kids moshing. Mm-hmm. It's just wild. Like I love it. Like, I mean, I think right now is probably the best time to be playing music, really. I hope it lasts, that, and I think I get scared that it won't, because it's difficult being a band that started essentially 15 years ago now to still keep people interested, but it still seems to be a thing.
Yeah, I've heard it from other people where they were comparing this boom that's happening within the hardcore world as the same as like grunge, and the grunge boom only lasted 4 or 5 years or whatever it is. But I feel like at least my optimistic side is like hopeful that it's not like hardcore is trendy right now, because I still feel like it's underground, and any of the things that are putting it out in the forefront are just momentary and not like, Knocked Loose plays Coachella and then next year it's going to be like 10 hardcore bands that are playing it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, there might be one or two here and there, but I think that the amount of history of like just how it's derived from punk and all that stuff is like, this isn't something that just like sparked off. Like maybe certain subgenres might have moments of rising and falling, but I think just the hardcore scene, which is, I use it as a bit of an umbrella term, that will, I think, continue going on. And yeah, there might be times in the future where, shows maybe go back to like less people than like selling out every single time. But like, I feel like it's only going up. That's just my thoughts.
And it's surprising because I think when I first saw it going up, I thought, wow, this is massive. And then it's a year later and it's going up more. And I'm like, it's wild. Like, this is this genre that, like, you're a part of, and it's wild. Like, kids are going crazy for it. No, it's sick, really, isn't it? And I feel like it's more in mainstream culture more so now than ever, which is interesting. I think people are starting to take it on as more of like, oh, look at me, I'm into this, I'm really cool. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's that sort of like, wasn't one of the Kardashians wearing like an agnostic front t-shirt recently or something like that?
Oh, potentially.
I saw something about that, and I think like they like that, don't they? They like that. Oh, I'm super unique, and listen to this. I mean, it's probably picked out by their stylist. Let's be honest, but
yeah. So maybe the Kardashian stylist listens to Agnostic Front, which I think is still sick.
That's amazing, isn't it? But it's slowly creeping in more, which I think is wild, like absolutely wild, and it's sick.
Yeah.
Because it can only get bigger.
Yeah. Like, there are certain shows or different things within just like more TV culture that, you might see like a certain poster in the background, or like a certain person wearing a t-shirt. And like, that's not someone just waking up one day being like, I think I'm going to wear this, as a bit of a gimmick. There's like someone who works on set who's like intentionally trying to leave different like Easter eggs or different things like that.
And there's a thought process behind it, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is what's important, I guess.
Yeah. I've been watching a show called One Tree Hill. My wife watched it when she was growing up, and we've been rewatching it, and I've been watching it for the first time. But there's one character that I guess is portrayed as more of like the punk of the circle of friends, but she's wearing like Social Distortion shirts and just like different things within her. I was just like, I like paused and I'm like looking at all these things, and she's like, why are you pausing? But it's things that make sense to me and people that have our background versus someone that's like, oh, someone screaming into a mic. I don't know who that is, but I'm like, oh, that's so-and-so frontman of this band and they played for this many years. So yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, there will always be people, whether you're as big as the Kardashians or, just some bozo who are going to try to fake the funk. But, it's just cool to see how everything feels like it's going up. Speaking of things going up, you were mentioning earlier how when the first record, or I guess it was the first EP that had Death by My Side on it, you feel like that was kind of a trajectory, and that was before definitely... I was just gonna say that's before The End, which in my opinion that is one of my favorite like more beat down records of all time. I feel like front to back there's no misses. That was, I think The End was like the first track I heard of you guys, and then I went back to Death by My Side. I was like, oh, okay, here's like,
so It's so weird though, because when that record came out, we thought it flopped.
Really?
Like, mate, like, honest to God, I fucking, that's my favorite record that I've ever been a part of writing. I love that record so much. Like, bits of it, like, still, when I think about when we wrote it, it was me. The drummer was from New York at the time. His name was Tommy, and he was a sick drummer. And
why did you have a drummer from New York when you guys?
We couldn't find one in England. It was like, it was a mess. It was a fucking mess. So we toured America with Vice, who's now he's the singer of Combust.
Okay. Wait, the singer of Combust played drums?
He was in Vice. He was the singer of Vice, who we toured with. He's now in Combust. His drummer left America and came and lived in England for a bit without like any formal visa or anything like that. Just was doing it on like holiday ones, which turned out to be a disaster, which is why he left. But those guys were talented. So he joined us and was like, he played guitar as well. So me and him started writing together. We went to a practice room in Wales and just lived in it for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And we had like 4 songs. We left with it finished, and we just would sit up all day, all night, just playing guitar, playing drums, and writing lyrics. And it was like such a sick experience that, like, and it's wild because when we come out, we're like, oh, it's not done that well. But it was, once again, it came out at a time where there was no way to monitor how well it was doing. Like, you had your record sales. It was the first record we'd put out on like a label. Beatdown Hardware put it out from Europe. We didn't know. We had no idea what it was going on. And it felt like following that, the shows weren't amazing. I think we obviously ran into quite a lot of problems with lineups. And we were like, wow, this record's just not done as well as we'd hoped. And now,
wild to hear that you
now looking, absolutely mental, to the point where we were going out when we like came back after taking a break and barely playing any songs off it. And then I was like, hang on a minute. These songs that we're playing off that record are going off. Like, they're going off. Like, there's someone's missing something here. And that's when I started kind of talking to people, and they were like, no, man, that record's sick. Like, that record's it's the best one you've done. And I was like, oh, right. But at the time, I think the band was so disjointed. Obviously, we had a drummer from America who's basically couldn't get in the country anymore because every time he tried to land, they were like, we're going to deport you next time, mate. You're taking a fucking piss.
Oh, fuck.
We were just so in such a rut that we didn't know. We had no clue of the impact that it had. And I think maybe the impact was better throughout the different parts of the world, because I think in Europe, I don't know personally if they got it. Like, it was very influenced by Biohazard, like hugely massive New York influence, with obviously our drummer at the time being from New York. I don't think they could really, I don't know if they sort of just wanted another beatdown record, like a straight up, just slow chugging beatdowns. We really wanted to push in more of that direction for a long time.
Right.
But then once we finally kind of had the resources to write in that sort of like creative space, that was when we pushed towards it. But yeah, it felt like, because that was at the same time like Knock Loose came out with laugh tracks. I think we looked at it like maybe we should have stuck heavier, but actually I love that record. That's my favorite one we've written.
Yeah. Well, even just looking at you guys' Spotify, like your top 10 songs, like there's 2 off of the Disorder of Mind EP, and everything else is just off that record. And like, the tracks that have exceeded like 1 million streams, like those are all off the end. And like, I personally think Therapy is like a perfect beatdown song. Like, it's just like the way that, there's the swell up and then like the stop with the do it, like every time I'm just like pounded on my steering wheel. That song is
for me, that song, I remember writing that song in the practice room, and we didn't have a means to record the drums when we were writing it, so we'd program it in, and I was like programming like whatever, and Tommy's just being like, mate, it needs to be Lars Ulrich. And I'm like, what? Like what, you want it like Lars Ulrich? And he's just like literally just bang.
Yeah, just kick, snare, kick, snare. That's it.
So fucking hard. Like,
dude,
it's
the blueprint for like real deal. Like, I'm not trying to plug my own shit, but like I started a side project where I feel like I was like, I want to write beatdown like this record, because it just, the tone of it, the production, the songwriting was just at a heaviness that I like really wanted to at least try to replicate. And you know, there were certain people that maybe who didn't know you guys were like picking up on different bands. And then I think, because I've had Jay from Guilt Trip on the show, and big fan of that band as well. And when I sent it to him, because I think that came up on his podcast, I was like, this is heavily Desolated influence. And he was like, oh yeah, I can hear end riffs on this. So
that's sick.
Yeah. So maybe after, if you'd be so kind to check out the track.
send it definitely. Yes. 100%, man. I'm on that.
There's one song specifically I was like, okay, this is maybe too close to ripping off this band, but you know, everyone's pulling inspiration.
It all comes from somewhere, doesn't it? At the end of the day, like,
yeah,
just go with it, man.
Yeah. So
you can just take it. I appreciate
it. But it is wild to hear that at least when you guys put out that record, it was just like, did we do something wrong? But you know, maybe that needed to marinate, and in time people came, well, not even like people came around to liking it, but maybe the right people just weren't hearing it the week that it dropped, you know?
And I think the biggest problem was our biggest tour for it came out on the tour. So we went out on this tour playing predominantly songs off the end to promote the new record. And it was a room full of people just staring at us. Like, you play Death by My Side, there's kids flying off the stage. You're playing like Olanzapine, and like, you need to know that song to get it live, like for real. And, you know, you've got all the, like the street beat type things going on. And it just felt like no one cares about this record. Like, it was so weird. But then later, after time, it's like, no, that's our biggest record. Like, even Charlie, when he joins, like, obviously he plays in Malevolence, he was like, oh, how come you want to play loads of songs off this? The biggest stuff's the earlier stuff. And I was like, I don't know, man. I'm not sure it is. And he was like, sure? Like, I think it might be. I'm like, it doesn't look like it according to Spotify.
Right.
It's like Numb. That's a prime example. Yeah, we'd never played that live, ever. And then when we went to America and Benny filled in, we were like, we might as well just play a new set list because he's going to have to learn them all anyway. So it's whatever. We played that song and it went off. Like, I was like, oh, right. That's never thought to play it before, but then realized quite quickly that we are in the sort of flip reversal where we actually think we are.
So I was just going to say that's a great segue into talking about that tour with These Streets. You know, big friends of the show. All those guys are gems of humans. Cam specifically, I've been able to rub shoulders a lot with him, and you know, just big fans of that band. And when they announced that Desolated was coming over, and then Benny was also filling in on drums, I was like, oh, this feels like a match made in heaven with you know, some American and UK beatdown doing the cause together. So again, like maybe not having any newer material to play. Maybe you guys played some newer songs, but like, was there a bit of hesitancy, like you said, like do people remember us? Are people going to give a shit? Is this going to be like the last time we came out here and it wasn't as poppin'? Obviously, like turned into a really positive way in the end, pun intended. But was there some worry between the rest of the band before you guys, you know, made the trek over here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was relatively confident on it, but I feel like I like a little bit of blind optimism, to be honest. Yeah, there was quite a lot of worry, to be honest. I think just about everything. I think touring America is so risky, and so many UK bands that have gone out. I mean, it's been the end of their careers because they've just lost so much money. And I think the first time we went out, we were super fortunate to sell a lot of merch and have good guarantees, but we lost so much money. If we hadn't have
This is the first time you came, not these recent.
Yeah, the first time.
Okay.
If we hadn't have like had a successful run, I mean, I would have been screwed. Really, I think it's expensive getting, because it's such a big country, isn't it? Driving about, renting vans and stuff. But then this time, yeah, there was definitely some fear involved. But I feel like I kind of knew that it was going to be decent. You can tell by how much promoters are offering, I think, like, because a promoter's not going to offer a reasonable amount of money if they think the show's going to suck. So I figured it would be good. I didn't know how good it was going to be. There was definitely worry about it, of like, but that was the best tour I've ever done. I loved that tour. And, you know, I liked the sleeping in the van with 12 people. I thought that it's wholesome, man. It's bonding. It's the struggle. You're in it together. Other people probably won't agree with me, but that was one of my favorite things, is just you're getting in a van, like you're not sleeping great. It felt like when I was 21 touring in Europe for the first time, and you're on the road and you're with your friends. And like, I think with these streets, like, I love them. They're like such nice people, and like they're decent people to be around. And they're all different, so you can like rinse as much conversation as you want. Like, I would spend one of the nights sat next to Fred just talking about like fucking Hatebreed or something. Like it was I loved it. Like, for me, it was a really, really good experience. Like, tour wise as a band, it was amazing. And then I enjoyed the vibe, really. I don't enjoy American food too much, though. It's a bit much.
Oh, how so? Too greasy, or
so heavy? It's just so heavy, and like, I mean, I just want a salad once in a while or something like that, you know. It's just a bit much, and I think every UK band says it. I don't know if they've ever expressed it outside of their sphere, but it's like, when I go into America, I feel rough because the food is just so heavy.
So American promoters, take note. Maybe if there's a UK band, maybe cater some salad. Man. Get some salad.
There'll be UK bands everywhere. Like, I'm so angry at me right now, but yeah, like, I just find it's very difficult to.
We went to this show in America, and all they had was salad, and it was because some Canadian on a podcast said that.
Yeah, so it is. I struggle with the food. I think that's the only thing. But I mean, I try and eat quite healthy. I'm in my 30s. Like, I can't be dealing with putting on loads of weight every 6 months. So I think I try and stay on top of things and go in there. Especially when you're on tour, it's so hard.
Yeah. What's the go-to salad of choice for you?
For
on
me,
tour or just at home?
Well, what would I get? My wife makes a great salad. I don't know what any of it is, but it tastes good.
Okay.
It tastes good.
It's probably super colorful. Got some things in there. It
has like these onions. She does something with the onions, and they're just mint. She smashes it.
Okay.
I was never really into the salad thing. I try and eat. I eat a lot of tofu and rice. That's my sort of thing. Quite sort of minimal carbs, really, and just high protein. It seems to work the best for it. It keeps me sort of quite active and makes me quite awake. So, but yeah, I feel like it's a lot of fried food, which I don't really do much of here, to be fair.
Were there any moments of that tour where you were like, you felt the gurgles after a night of eating somewhere? Or is that
it was just
times?
Like, yeah, every day, really. It was just like when you want a snack, and you go into like you call them truck stops, don't you? Like we're service stations, and it's just like chips, crisps, and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like here you can go into a service stations, like you've down the M1. If I'm going to London, there's M1, right? Every other service station has an M&S, which sounds like falafel, hummus, and like all these wonderful things.
That's crazy.
Yeah, man. English services, it's where you need to be, really.
Well, I'm learning that, you know, over on your side of the globe, there's much higher end food choices if you're on the road versus like.
I went to one not so long ago. I had a Nando's and a Wetherspoons and a Pizza Express. Wild.
That is wild.
Pretty poor service, I'll be honest. I walked out of Pizza Express, but it was there. That's what's important.
Oh, okay. Well, no love to Pizza Express. We don't even have that over here. So, you know, this is an anti-Pizza Express podcast.
Yeah, not the best, if I'm honest. But still, great services. It definitely, for me, that's my top one services of all time. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's good that you're on the health game as far as when you're playing shows. But yeah, it's the selections. You know, I've played in bands that have multiple vegan members. So when we are rolling up, it's like, okay, what can I eat here? And there's usually like one or two things. But like even in that context of something being vegan, it's not necessarily even going to be healthy at the end of the day.
Yeah. So. It's a lot of, and I think that's where I struggle in America, because it's like, if you want healthy food, it wouldn't be too hard. But if you want vegan healthy food, that's where I think that you struggle. You really struggle, because there's just so many. I mean, they taste great. Let's be honest, they taste brilliant. But it's afterwards. It's just like the greasy, feel tired. It doesn't give you that sort of energy. And I think
it'll give you momentary happiness, and then like a long.
And I mean, after I got back from America last time, that is the biggest I've ever been. I felt so big. Like
you put
really
on the
big.
American pounds after that tour.
Yeah. And everyone said when I started my new job that I was going to put on weight being there, but I actually lost weight because I was losing the weight that I'd gained on an American tour.
Well, we want as many European bands to come through, but I think the lesson here is we need to offer more healthy options for the bands.
The shows make up for it, though, don't they? And
that's true. That's true.
To be honest, like it's the place to be. Like I'd love touring America. I think it's my favorite place to tour, really.
I want to go to. I don't know if this is something that's intentionally done within the Desolated camp, or something that just is me potentially overthinking it. But within all the 4 releases that you guys have, there's always some kind of, I'll call it the Desolated damsels. There's always some kind of character, usually female, that's presented within there. And I don't know if that is just, all of the... I'm not sure if it's the same artist that's doing all of those releases, or if there's a connection between all of those people. But yeah, is there something behind that, or is it like we want the same artist always including that with every release?
We definitely ask for a woman to be on the cover. Well, I do. It's not my thing with it is I'm a massive fan of Art Nouveau, or was when I first got into hardcore. Art Nouveau was like my favorite art movement, really. You don't find many people that can paint Art Nouveau style anymore. And I found this guy, his name's Chris Panettiere. I think that's how you pronounce his name, on Deviant Art. I don't even know if that still exists anymore.
Yeah,
but it was like an art blog. It was like an art blog in sort of the boom of the internet, if you will. And I was searching artists that I like, and I found him, and I messaged him, and I was like, really like your stuff. Could you do me some artwork for my band? And he immediately got back and was like, I'd love to. This is the space that I want to be. I'm a massive Mastodon fan. I thought, yeah, brilliant, cool. So I said what I wanted. And with Art Nouveau, a lot of the old thing is that the flowing hair within the women. I said, I basically want this. And then I wanted the themes, and I would tell him what the record was about. And then he'd come up with a conceptual idea and do it. And he paints it all by hand. So obviously it takes a really, really long time. But you'd get this artwork back and be like, whoa. And I thought, looking at his artwork from where we first started, because we used him for the 6th Day record, and if you look at the ones now, like as an artist, he's like flawless now. So yeah, that was always the sort of plan, and I think it became like a thing, and we wanted that theme to always continue. And like, my thing is, the logo is never on the records anywhere. I don't really like to even have a track listing if possible. I just want it art, just from being a fan of art. So it's like, here is the art for this record. And I think with like metal and hardcore, it's not very pretty, is it? Let's be honest. And I think I like that clash of like, the record's fucking angry, it's pissed off. Like, I want that complete, like, if you're looking at that record, you're not expecting what's on it.
No, you're like, oh, this could be like a folk artist, or this could be like a singer-songwriter, and then it's like, dun, 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 you know? Like,
and I
could throw
really,
someone for a loop
really,
for sure.
Yeah, and I really, really wanted that to be the premise. So I don't think we'd ever use a different artist, because he's themed it so well. And I think a lot of people... Do you know if
they did any other bands, or were you guys like the
He's
first
done
one?
loads now. He's done absolutely loads. I think like his waiting list might be like a year long now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's. I think he's pretty big. I don't know what other style of bands he's done. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, he's...
But when you first reached out, like, did he say, yeah, I've done other bands, or he's like, oh, this would be the first time?
He'd done no one at all. He just had his work on DeviantArt, and I think he's a lawyer. I think he's a lawyer in Texas, because I met him at a show, and he was basically like, yeah, I'm not an full-time artist at all. So yeah, but now he's done loads.
Can we shout out his Instagram right now? I just want to be able to pull this up.
It's Chris Panetier. I think that's how you spell it. It's It's Pantier, I think.
Oh, this is a skateboarder. This is not Chris Pana. Chris Pana. Oh, Tier. Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah. This is him. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure. I'm gonna make sure that we include his link in this episode, because the fact that, you know, you reached out to him and you wanted to do something totally different, he was cool enough to like, let's try that out. And the fact that now he's doing that for other bands and he has a long waiting list, like, that's very, very, very cool.
Yeah, he's amazing, and I think it draws a lot of people in as well. That was never like a goal, really. I just wanted really nice art, but it draws people in to being like, well, what's this? It's quite recognizable, especially in our scene. I don't really know the other bands that he does it for, if I'm honest. So I don't know what their scene is like. Maybe they all sort of use him. I don't really know. But with us, it's so stands out that I think as a beatdown band, it would be really hard to use that artist and not be confused. Especially if you don't put the logo on the front cover like me.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, it is really cool to hear how you were like, I want this, if it's going to be the artwork, I want it to be the artwork first, not artwork and here's the name of it and here's my band's name like beside it and like all of that. Like, you know, there are a lot of people that scream from the rooftops like, if you put your logo on, more people will. But I think it is more respectable to be like, this is the artwork. You know, if you know, you know. And if not, maybe the artwork will be cool enough that you'll go and check it out. And 9 times out of 10, that is usually of what happens. You see something undeniably sick and you're like, okay, I got to check this out. Whether that's in the record store or on Spotify or whatever. So artwork plays a huge part.
Labels hate it. Absolutely hate it. When you say, no, we don't want the logo anywhere on it. Right. They're like, what? Like, this is obscene. Yeah, they hate it. But it's part of my sort of thing with the theme is that it doesn't touch it. Mm-hmm. No text on the front. At a push, I'll have it on the back, depending on the design with the track listing. But I would like not to, if possible. I can't sometimes put it on the spine just to keep people that are involved in putting it out happy. But for the most part, I try and avoid it at all costs, really.
Yeah, no, I respect it, and I think it's really worked in your guys' favor. But I don't know if maybe there's some lore that you guys can build around these desolated damsels, because I need
to look through the emails of what I sent to him and what I actually asked for, because a lot of the time, where he takes so long to do it, a lot of the time I've emailed before the record's out and said, hey, this is what the record's about. Can you do it? And then sometimes it changes. I think the end changed, and we had 4 covers for that, which was pretty cool. So each format has a different cover. So CD, vinyl, digital, and there was another one, but I can't remember what the other one was used for, but it was used for something. It might have just been Japan. Mm-hmm. They all have different covers. And the idea was that the original idea was to have the 4 covers as sheets in the front and just a disco bag? Is that what they're called? The sleeve, it would go in the vinyl, and the vinyl would match the front of the cover, and then each one would be different. So for people that collect them, it would be kind of cool. But we ended up signing to a label, and I think it was really complicated for what to do. They were like, kind of like, well, we'd rather just put out a gatefold record or whatever. So I was like, okay, fair.
Yeah.
So each one became CD, one became vinyl, one became digital, and then the other one was used. I honestly can't remember where. But the theme for that's the only one I can remember, because I found the email the other day, and I think it was Heaven, Hell, Life and Death. So each one has a different theme. And obviously Verse of Judas was themed around, the idea was that we had all the gods in one place, because you never know, you no matter how much you look, you don't know what's real and what's not, if you're into religion and things like that. I mean, I'm not personally overly religious, but I like the idea of religion, and I find it fascinating that there's loads of different ones, and I wanted to write a record about that. So I wanted like all of these gods kind of all in the same vicinity, which I think it paid off. I can't actually remember what the cover looks like, to be honest, apart from there's a woman on the front, and then they're all sort of around. Yeah. So I remember that one. I honestly can't remember what I asked for Death by My Side. I think I just told him it was going to be called Death by My Side. It's a really depressive record. And he just went crazy, because I think he titled it Depression, I think. So yeah.
Well, the girl is theoretically on her side, so I think that there's something.
Yeah,
there.
It's up there actually. Yeah. It all means something. So he's sent me emails of how he's made these links. Like he's obviously very artistic thinking, and can sort of be like, well, this has this meaning, this has this meaning, and kind of says, well, I've done this because I want it to look like this. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like I try and keep my briefs for him very brief, because I like him to kind of really have the most creative control as possible, because he's a master of what he does.
Yeah, it's. I think when you find someone that you really love their stuff, it's like when you really love that artist, it's way better to be like, I have some preferences, but I do want you to like be in the driver's seat the whole time that we're doing this. And if you feel like we need to take a turn here and go down this route, like I trust your process. And I feel like that's where you're going to get the best result of something. And yeah, like not every single artist is the best fit for every single band, but when you do find that one that you're like, it's the ones that you're like, I love every single thing that this artist does, then it's like they could do anything and you would be happy. 9 times out of 10.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to Chris. You're doing some good work there, bud. So you were mentioning, as far as like, we've been talking about like lack of new music in the last few years, and it sounds like there's something cooking. I'm sure there's more that you can't say than things that you can say, but is there anything that you want to tease or anything within?
It's done. I mean, the record's kind of
Okay.
finished, I think, but it changes all the time. So sometimes it's finished and sometimes it's like back on the drawing board.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a really long process, but I think everyone lives so far from each other that it's sort of minimal writing time, especially actually meeting up and kind of getting into the swing of things, which a lot of bands do. They see each other regularly. I mean, we don't even see each other at all. You know, I see Paul probably now like maybe once or twice a year, unless we're playing shows, and then I'll see him then. But I won't see him very often.
Yeah.
So it's there. It's done. I think it will be out at the end of this year. I think.
Okay.
But I said that in 2021. So.
And then 2 years went by. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I honestly thought it'd be done in 2019 as well. But here we are.
Okay.
And it's still not done. But now there's tracks. They are finished, I think. I'd say they're finished. Okay. I think it's 10 tracks as well. It's an actual album this time, which is decent. It's very similar to the end, I think. It's definitely that sound and that vibe. It's a lot more. It's back to the roots, really. I think that Realm of Misery was more experimental and more metal, and it also had different writers on it and felt very rushed. Okay. I mean, they've all kind of felt rushed, if I'm honest, but the process of Realm of Misery felt like this really long process, because we weren't a band when we were writing it. We were just kind of, let's start playing shows again, but we want to come out with a new record. Right. But it felt like right towards the end, it was like, shit, we need to finish this record and put it out. So we did, but it's not what I really wanted to release, if I'm honest. I look back at it and think, I mean, it's cool, it's heavy, but it's not me. That's how I feel when I listen to it. I'm quite critical of everything we've ever released, but out of all of them, I think that one is the one that stands out to the most. Is it just doesn't feel like, it just feels off to me. I like it, and I think I like some of the songs on it, but I don't know. I think we wanted to try something different. We didn't want to be stagnated on old stuff, and we wanted to kind of write longer songs. Whereas this one, it feels much more like it's just angry. It's a lot more angry. I think the end is much more themed around this cycle that never ends. That's what that's how I wrote the end. It was a cycle that's not supposed to end. There isn't an end. That was the purpose of it. It's just, it will always continue. Yeah. Whereas this one is a lot more focused around just the state of everything, really, like how people feel, like how you feel, how the world is at the moment. And I think it's a lot more embedded in reality lyrically than the end. I think lyrically it's slightly different, maybe not so much, but it's definitely more embedded in reality, which is cool, because I've never ventured down that route before. It's always felt very unreal. It's always felt very delved into emotions, whereas this one doesn't feel so emotional. It feels much more like just angry, really.
Yeah.
But I think it is. I think it will be out this year. I'm hoping it will be. So
I mean, you're saying all the right things to get me excited about it. So, are you in charge of the writing of the songs instrumentally as well as the lyrics, or do you play a part in both of those?
I think it's much more split these days. I think previously it was the majority around me, but now it's much more split across all parties.
Okay.
I think Charlie's had quite a lot of input, who is the drummer of Malevolence, plays with us now. He's had quite a big influence with it. And I think now it feels much more like, here's this song idea, I send it, and I get a lot of change this, change that, change this, change that. Whereas before it felt like, here's a song idea, and then it was like an echo chamber. There was as much feedback. I think the members now are much more involved in it. And like Les has written quite a lot of guitar stuff for it as well, which is cool to play with him, because obviously he used to play in like 50 caliber and stuff like that, which is wild. So it's good to write with that, with Les, and he's so good at guitar. So it feels a lot more like musically full now. I think when the end was very much me and Tommy, and I think Dan Ford had left for the end. He'd left, so he just left, whereas he was kind of the person who was writing it with me before, whereas he'd left for the end and it became me and Tommy. And then after that, it became sort of like everyone was putting in input, but it didn't. I don't think it worked personally. I think it felt off. Realm of Misery felt really off, whereas this one feels much more whole. And I think like even I listened to it, like the demo tracks in the car on the way to work, and I was like, this is it. Like, this is hard.
Yeah.
A lot more focused around like the unobvious beat downs, as like the end was. Really, I felt like the end is much more curated around songs rather than beat downs, whereas Realm of Misery was curated around the breakdown, really. So I'm happy with it. I think it's sick. I mean, we've started doing stuff for it. We shot half a video for one of the songs off there already. So yeah, I think it's in full swing now. So hopefully by the end of the year it will come out.
Yeah, the boys are cooking. So let them cook. And I am very excited to hear that. I hope that maybe we can have either someone else from the band on the podcast around the time that it's dropped. If that helps incentivize it coming out this year, I'll just throw that into the ethos.
It needs to come out this year because I'm getting so sick of looking at it. And it's like one of the song names with the year 2019 next to it. And I'm like,
as someone that recorded a record in 2022 and we had to go through a bunch of our own things that now it's probably going to be coming out in 23, seeing that Dropbox link from the person we recorded say 2022 pains me every time. I can't imagine 2019. That's 3 times more. So
yeah, I mean, it's been a really long time, to be honest. And I was looking for lyrics. And we have like a WhatsApp group. So I was looking for lyrics that Les had written like ages ago to show to Charlie. And I searched the group and found it. And it was like 2020 or 2021 or whatever. And I was like,
yeah,
what have we been doing for 3 years?
Well, good things take time. That's something that my mom told me growing up. And, whether that's an album or something else you're doing. So I would rather a Desolated record come out that, in your words, doesn't feel rushed and feels right.
Yeah.
So I'm stoked for that personally.
Yeah, I think it'll be good.
Mm-hmm. So one of the last things I want to talk to you about, Richy, is so you're a director, and I know with Desolated, like you guys have not shied away from doing music videos or any of that, and that's definitely one of the ways that I first found out about you guys. When did, I guess, that passion of yours get introduced, and when did you start to blend that with the music? Because you do stuff like for bands, but you do stuff well outside of music in general.
I think I always wanted to get into it. Like when we used to shoot music videos, it was like I really wanted the creative control, and I always wanted to get into it, but it felt like the barrier to entry was so high back then, especially with money of cameras and stuff like that. Whereas now it's like you can go and buy a cinema camera for just over $1,000, like,
right,
and shoot in 4K and buy some lights, and it all works fine. And when we were in America, I was talking to Kevin. I can't remember what his surname is. He shot some footage for us when we were in Sacramento for the next lot of music videos. And he just kind of like sparked my interest in it again, really. And I was talking to him about it, and he was like, yeah, this camera is like really good. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I went back home and I bought a camera, and then just started kind of trying to fizzle together work, really, and get better at it. I mean, to be honest, it's better than a day job. I enjoy it. It's, even if it's not paid, it's a good thing to do on your time away from work,
Yeah.
I think I always like creative stuff, and I think we came from an age that was so difficult with creative stuff, because like I went to art school and studied graphic design and came out and did nothing with it, because there it was kind of like you had to give everything, and on your time off you had to go and intern with this person and this person, whereas when I had time off, I was on tour. That's what I wanted to do. So it felt like, I don't think it felt like a waste. Like I think I learned valuable stuff there, but then I don't know, it just kind of came. I like being in a creative space. That's my favorite sort of sphere to be in, really.
Yeah.
Before this, I was painting a lot, and the problem with that is it needs so much space, and yeah, it becomes really difficult to keep up. And you just end up with your flat looking horrible. So I had to kind of, until I get a space, painting's relatively on hold, I think, sadly, because I enjoyed that as well. But I think this gives me a bit more of a thing. And it's nice to just be around different people that want things and do different things as well. Like I always wanted to do kind of music videos, but I think it's hard in this day and age, because with the evolution of like TikTok and stuff like that, like you can shoot it on your phone. Why does anyone need anyone? So it's been nice to go and do some like commercial stuff, really, and things like that was cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's cool to, like, when I hit your personal, like, to see, like you might do some like some merch promotional stuff and like shoot it in the gym and kind of do that, but you'll also do like a gym like video and someone like working out, or like someone with their watches. Like, to me, as also as a creative, and have done a plethora of different freelance video stuff and any industry that you can imagine, it's cool to see people maybe build up that skill set within the hardcore community, and filming bands and doing things like that, and then go and kill it if like you're shooting your buddy's like car show, or someone has like a small business like at a food spot, and you're like, hey, I'll come and shoot a commercial, and they're like, did you go to school? It's like, nah, I just went on tour with my friends and I had a camera in hand. But yeah. So just correct me if I'm wrong. You had a passion in that originally, and then it sounds like there was a lull, but up until that These Streets tour where you were seeing someone else do that kind of like rekindled or resparked.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like for that These Streets tour kind of rekindled a lot of things for me, like touring in general, just playing hardcore shows. Because I mean, we don't get to play that often. we're all very booked up with jobs, and Charlie's obviously in Malevolence, which is massive now.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it really kind of pushed me back to a space that I think I thought that I didn't want to be in, but didn't realize how much I missed, really. I think that tour did a lot for me, probably with my own sort of being, really. Because I think I'd pushed out of the space for so long. Like, you know, we stopped doing Desolated for a while. I went and studied. I became a nurse, which is cool. And I like helping people and stuff. But it's like, you're not getting that fulfillment of doing something creative. It's a career, if you look at it that way, but it's not, you're not feeling that urge to either go and play a show, pick up a paintbrush, like film something and sit there and have the buzz of editing it. Like, and I thought I could get that buzz from doing like psych nursing. I thought I could, and maybe I did for a while, but it did feel like there was something kind of missing. And I think then playing shows again and being around like the hardcore community and kind of pushing in that direction, it was sort of kind of eye-opening, really, of why did I leave this space? Well, not leave, but why did I kind of distance myself from this space? What was the reasons, and why have I kind of lost my way, really? I think there's definitely some sort of self-questioning going on with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there's like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with your having a, you know, there's other things at your life that, you know, there's shifts and, you know, you're focusing on your work, or you have a family crisis and you're like, I can't play in a band or go to, like, I just have to focus on that. But at least for me, anytime that I've had like some absence of that and I go to like a really awesome show, doesn't matter who's playing, doesn't matter how many people are there, when it's like the vibe is perfect, that can just like resparked all those things that I felt when I was like 16, 17, 18, first going to shows. And, you know, there's definitely a large spectrum where there are bands that touring and putting out records and doing that is their full-time thing, and then there's people that are in their very first band or on their 10th band and they're just playing local shows and that's all that they can do. But I think the people that stick around, there's at least some, I think the people that have stuck around and stood the test of time, I think those people are recognized and continue to get some level of opportunity. It might not be like all the way crazy 10 out of 10. It might not, but it definitely isn't 1 out of 10. There's going to be a spectrum where it's like, hey, like, we want to book Desolated for this tour, or we want to bring Scoped out to do this thing, because you guys have been around the block. You didn't just get here and you didn't come in just expecting. I think that's a really big thing that I try to say multiple times on the pod, because again, we have people of all ages and backgrounds that are listening, but like, there's definitely a lot of new faces and kids and people that are excited. But I think with everything, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the ability of being able to like kind of get reminded and not like humbled per se, but like, oh, this is actually why I fell in love with this in the first place. And, you know, changing your trajectory if you got too off course, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think for me, I've always found it very difficult. It never feels like you're doing enough. I think I'm a very critical person, particularly on myself and others. And I think like you always think you can be better, you can be doing the next best thing, you need to work harder and all those things. And I think I've translated that into every aspect of my life, which, yeah, I mean, it's got me to where I need to be, but it's pretty exhausting if I'm honest.
Right.
But, you know, like with everything that I've ever done, it's like, right, I'm not doing good enough. I need to be doing better. I need to be going harder. I need to be doing this. And I think it's so hard for me not to slip into that space. I have to be super careful because, I mean, I live in that space all the time, but even with Desolated, it's like, you know, so we're writing a record, it's like, it needs to be better. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why it's taken so long and stuff like that, because I just constantly feel like I'm chasing something that doesn't exist.
Right.
Which is a big thing. And I think that even if there was a top, if you got to it, it's like, what now? You know, and I think I'm quite fortunate to have given myself a lot of life experiences with, you know, dabbling in art, Desolated, being a psychiatric nurse, all of those things. I've done some like wild things, and it's amazing to look back on it. And I think that is the mentality that got me there, because nothing was ever enough. So I can't remember what the original question is, but maybe that's the takeaway from that.
Yeah. But like, everything that you're saying there, Richy, is like so prevalent to my own life. Like, I'm always my worst critic. I have to constantly practice like not giving myself more grace when, like, even when I think I don't deserve it, and always feeling like behind. And, you know, like I'm someone that like films bands, that plays in 2 bands. I have 2 dogs. I'm married. I have a lot of other creative things that I wish I could do, but I just like I'm feeling like like it is within my soul that I want to be overextended, but then like my physical body's like, what are you doing? You know, like you're just kind of like pushing yourself past that. And sometimes it's like self-defeating, where it's like, did I do enough in the day? And then you're like, oh, well, I actually did this. And I feel like anyone who could zoom out of their life and zoom in onto mine would be like floored by how much I have going on and how much responsibility. And like at the end of the day, it isn't for everyone to have like that level of intensity, but like some people do thrive in the chaos. I wouldn't say I'm thriving per se, but I prefer having things to do and having some kind of calling and why to like it just existing. I feel like even if I just played in one band, I feel like I would mentally just crumble, because it's like that is not enough for me. Is my cup overflowing right now? Probably, but I would much rather it be more than full than not even halfway. I don't know if you feel the same per se.
Well, I actually feel like my cup's relatively empty, to be honest, and it's a bit annoying, really, because I think I thrive off having a lot of projects going on, and I get excited about them, and I don't at the moment. And as much as, I mean, I can't even say it's nice to relax, because I don't find it nice. I find it a very uneasy place to be in. I think was at the beginning of the year, I had so much film work on. I think there was stuff going on with Desolated as well. I can't actually remember when it was, but it just felt like, as much as I sit there and complain that I'm exhausted, like I love it. Like I'm in my zone. So I think at the moment, like it feels like downtime, and that for me, being in that space is really difficult, because it's like there's all these things that I need to do, but I don't want to do them. I want to like paint something, or like film something, or like write some music, or play a show. And I think that for me is a really strange place to be in, because I think I've moved to a part of the country that is a lot slower place than London, and it's just, it feels different, and I'm not sure where I fit in with it.
I see.
So yeah, I think it is definitely difficult being critical on yourself, but I think for me, it's definitely my way of surviving. Like, I don't really know about it. And I read this thing. It was when I was into art, and I was trying to paint, and I really wanted to learn how to paint like a Renaissance painter. I went to Rome, I saw some art, and I was like, I'm going to learn to do that. My wife was like, listen, just to let you know, like, they studied under a master for like 10 years. Like, I was like, it'll be all right. I'll figure it out. It'll be fine. So I started learning, and I mean, it went absolutely terribly for the first year, I'd say. And my wife was always saying to me, like, you need to give yourself a break. And I was like, I don't. And then I read this thing by an artist called Titian, who was a massive artist in the 16th century. And he said that he would treat his paintings as his mortal enemy. And it just all made sense following that, because that's what it is. Like, you always have to get to that next level. And the only way you're going to get there is failure. And failure is such a good thing. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm at the moment. Need to fail at some stuff and try new things and fail at them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely like having some barks. I once I was able to kind of make the shift in my mind, when it comes to like failure isn't like this, like I've totally, everything is gone. It's like, no, this is actually teaching more than like me getting the dub, like,
yeah,
that is where you're like, oh, that didn't go right. How can I make sure that doesn't happen again, and refine my process, make sure that, don't be an idiot and involve that person or whatever it is. But like, as soon as I kind of like change that and almost like expect, the failure, or like, I'm just like, where is it? Where is that thing? But it is good to hear. Well, I appreciate you being vulnerable at the very least, just to be like, right now, like I need more for my cup, and maybe not more on your plate, but just more things that are actually like juicing, to actually like get you to that speed. Because I feel that same way, where it's like maybe I'm like kind of talking a little bit back to what I was saying about my cup is overflowing, but it's actually more like my plate is overflowing. It's like kind of your plate and your cup are kind of two separate things. Like, my plate is definitely full. It's beyond buffet mode, but I feel like my cup is maybe closer to what you were saying, as far as like kind of being, what on my plate is actually going into this cup that's actually making it something worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. For real.
Yeah. It's very clear that you're a very creative dude, and whether it's music or Renaissance paintings. I hope that we can get some Richy Renaissance paintings one day. I'm hoping for that.
They're all on my wall. They're all on my wall.
True.
I've hung them up. They're there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you post those anywhere, or is that kind of like
I did
not
for a
online
while.
yet?
I think I'll post some up today, actually, to remind myself that I once could paint. I do. They're really hard to take pictures of, though. Like, I don't know what it is. I've never understood how you take a picture of a giant canvas. But yeah, I do occasionally put them up. I think I haven't done it for so long now. It's been probably over a year. And I think the last time I did it was my flat in London, but it looked like an art studio. It didn't look like a home, which was not a place that you want to be when you're finishing work and coming home and everything smells of oil.
That's true. Well, I'll have to go check out some of the artwork, and I'm hoping that you can find space and time to be able to do that. Richy, before we end the episode, I ask the same kind of final question to every guest that comes on. Tell me a Mosh related story so we can end your episode. And that's anything that's first to your head. Could be wholesome, gruesome, funny, something that happened to you or something you did at a Desolated show or not. Whatever's first to your dome is how we start to end the show.
The first one that springs to mind is we played Ghost Fest. I cannot remember what year. Shout out to Toyin, because that was an amazing fest back in the day. Mm-hmm. I can't remember what year it was. I think it might have been 2014, 2013. And our friend Ben Spencer was there, and we got put on the main stage, and Toyin was managing us at the time and helping us out a lot. And obviously it was his festival, so he said to the security, just leave it. Just let what happens. So I'm like playing this set on this stage, and like back then it was a big fest for then. It was massive. Like, it felt massive. I don't know if it was, but for me it felt like a really big deal when we got to play it. And we were on the main stage, and it's like a proper venue, like not like no barrier or anything like that. There's the big barrier, there's the security pulling crowd service overs, and our mate Ben Spencer come because he used to go to all the shows, and I'm playing, like looking at my guitar or whatever. I've looked up and he's hanging off the balcony but on top of people, so he's got his like arms on the balcony, he's hanging, and he does lap of this, I guess it's like 1,000 cap venue off the balcony. It must have taken him probably about 3 minutes to get round. Right. And all you can see...
And he's just stepping on people?
Yeah, and all you can see under his feet is people just fall into the floor as they go around. And I was like, this guy, man, like this guy is just number one mosher, like probably my favourite mosher ever. And just watching the chaos that he caused through all of the early Desolated days. And you turn up to a show with him in the van and they'd be like, oh, this prick's here, great. But yeah, that was, for me, was one of the most like surreal things, watching him hang on a balcony and make his way around 1,000 cap venue, because it went all the way around the dance floor.
Right.
So he just was walking all the way around. He's got to below the sound guy and he just carries on. Wow. And the security just on the edge of the stage just being like, what the
just
fuck
shaking
is
their heads.
Yeah, just what the fuck is going on here?
I mean, there are very few opportunities where you can have some balcony mosh. So
yeah,
to all the listeners, you know, if there is a time and you want, you know, I'm not get on it. But I also think that there are probably people who are on the opposite side of this, you know, balcony ring that are like, this guy, I see a pattern and I feel like I'm on the line of fire. And so I feel like it's worth shouting out all the people that probably anticipated that happening. And they're like, well, if we just move out of the way, this guy's just going to like bail.
Hang off a balcony,
hang off the balcony and probably fall and break his leg or something. So I feel like those people deserve some acknowledgement. But
yeah, shout out
the balcony moshers.
Yeah,
gotta do it.
And if there's a chance for another one, Chain Reaction, the mic stands, always going for the mic stands. Absolutely loved it. Like, I just thought it was so, especially when I watch back the video and see Tony every time he leans into the mic, just the mic dart across the stage. Class, loved it.
I guess as a backup vocalist, you're like, you know, if the mic stand gets tossed, you're like, well, I guess I can't do my parts now. But like,
yeah,
you know, usually there's enough people who are like putting it back together mid set. So
it sort of appeared. It appeared like 3 or 4 times and then would disappear really quickly. I just really think that was just took me back to 2013, and I was like, this is sick, like, amazing.
Yeah. So whether it's on the balcony or the mic stand, if it's desolated in the room, it's a no holds bar kind of situation, in my opinion. So Richy, all of the music links and your links will be in the description and in the show notes. If there's anyone that you want to shout out, anything you want to plug, or anything you want to send the people off with, the floor is yours, man.
Shout out the rest of the boys in the band. Hi. I never. Do you know what? Right, I can probably think of 1,000 people, but it's not there right now. So shout out to everyone. Shout out to all the people listening, and thank you to the people still coming to the shows, really, because it means the world to me that I'm still fortunate enough to have this opportunity and go and play shows with my friends and Tony.
Well, I think shout out to everyone covers all the bases. You know, the people that have been around the Desolated early days, they know that they're specifically being shouted out for sure. But Richy, it has been a pleasure talking to you, man. I don't know if there's any plans for Desolated to come play Canada, but
there's not right now. But I mean, there's never any offers. That's the thing. If someone put an offer, then yeah, probably will. We try and do at least one international tour a year, maybe more after the record. I don't know.
Okay.
But well, I would quite like to do more, really.
Well, maybe post this episode, there needs to be some offers.
Yeah.
made.
Canada.
Western Canada, maybe, but we'll see. But Richy, thanks again for your time, and excited to put this out.
Yeah, sick, man. Thank you for having me.